You might have come across the term Jezebel spirit at some point in your life. Most people assume it's solely linked to immorality and perversion, but there's more to it than meets the eye. The Jezebel spirit is characterized by numerous traits that can impede church growth and alienate people from God's presence. You may be wondering, who exactly was Jezebel? Often dubbed the most notorious woman in the Old Testament, Jezebel was married to King Ahab. She introduced pagan practices to Israel, which greatly displeased God. Jezebel was an exceptionally wicked queen who championed idol worship and orchestrated the deaths of numerous prophets. She persuaded her husband, King Ahab, to abandon the Lord and worship other gods. Jezebel backed 850 prophets devoted to Baal and Asherah, whose abhorrent rituals provoked God's wrath. Her heart was so filled with malice that even the great prophet Elijah, one of God's most significant servants, fled in fear of her threats and in his despair, asked the Lord to end his life. In 1 Kings we read about this very situation. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Before we get started, I just want to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Click the subscribe button below the video and hit the notification bell so you'll get an alert whenever I post a new video. That way, I can help you in your walk with God. Jezebel's actions did not go unpunished. God empowered Elijah with renewed courage, and he returned to prophesy her grim fate. A violent death followed by the desecration of her body by dogs. And indeed, that's precisely what unfolded. The Bible recounts that a man named Jehu took the life of Jezebel's son, prompting her to confront him. In response, Jehu ordered her assassination. His men stormed the palace and threw Jezebel from a window. As she lay on the ground, Jehu callously ran her over with his chariot. When they attempted to bury her, only the bones of her hands and feet remained, the rest having been consumed by scavenging dogs. Jezebel's assaults against God's people were so devastating that her name became synonymous with a potent evil spirit bent on undermining God's authority, with the church being its prime target. Sadly, in many Christian communities, there are individuals influenced by this Jezebel spirit who mislead and impede spiritual growth. God, however, empowers us to overcome this evil so that his people may flourish. But how can we tell if the Jezebel spirit is at work among us? Here are some characteristics that might indicate its presence in your church. The first characteristic is prostitution. In 1 Kings chapter 9, we learn that Jezebel was a vain woman who often resorted to seduction to get her way. In the Bible, the term prostitution signifies infidelity, both in marriage and in our relationship with God. When someone is unfaithful to God, they are in essence prostituting themselves, as Jesus taught that no one can serve two masters. Jezebel engaged in both sexual infidelity, betraying her husband, and also spiritual, turning her back on the God of Israel through her practice of sorcery. The Jezebel spirit can infiltrate churches through individuals who are not committed to a holy lifestyle. Therefore, pastors and leaders must be discerning about whom they appoint to ministry positions. While we're all imperfect and fall short, those in leadership roles should strive to live lives of holiness. Someone entangled in sins like sexual immorality is not yet equipped to lead, as they need restoration first. This process should be handled with love and patience, never publicly exposing or shaming anyone. Beyond individual sin struggles, there's also the issue of spiritual infidelity. Some church members can be rebellious, constantly hopping from one church to another, seeking a place that caters to their preferences. They shop around for a church and a pastor who will meet their desires, and when they're not satisfied, they stir up trouble and try to undermine the leadership. The second characteristic is idolatry. The Bible tells us that Jezebel was deeply involved in idol worship, even supporting an army of over 850 prophets devoted to foreign gods. While we may not see such blatant practices today, idolatry is much more than just bowing down to statues. It's anything that takes God's place in our hearts, as our top priority should be the Lord. In today's Christian culture, we often see personalities like singers and pastors elevated more for their charisma and talent than for their faith in Jesus. This is where the Jezebel spirit operates, causing people to idolize these celebrities more than God himself, something God abhors. The third characteristic is manipulation. Jezebel was a master manipulator, insisting on having things her way. She even persuaded her husband to turn his back on the God of Israel and worship Baal instead. Furthermore, she was extremely envious. In one instance, she orchestrated a lie to have a man named Naboth murdered, all because her husband coveted his land. As a result, she took the life and property of an innocent man. A manipulative person resorts to deceit to get what they want, betraying and backstabbing those who don't comply with their wishes. The Jezebel spirit can enter churches through individuals who crave control. Some of these people hold positions of authority in their professional lives and carry that attitude into the church, treating their fellow believers as if they were employees or subordinates. The church is not a place for mistreatment, but rather a place to show love and companionship. Any societal positions of power should be left at the door. Within the church, we are all brothers and sisters, called to serve one another in love, as the Apostle Paul teaches in Galatians 5. And the fourth characteristic is persecution. Jezebel's ruthless persecution forced many of God's prophets into hiding to escape certain death. Countless prophets lost their lives at her hands, and even Elijah faced her threats. One of the main reasons for this persecution was that these prophets spoke the truth, not what Jezebel and her husband wanted to hear. Similarly, the Jezebel spirit can be seen in churches today where individuals are persecuted by their own fellow believers. In some churches, traditions are so deeply ingrained that when a man or woman of God suggests changes, they face persecution, both from within the church and from external sources. While external opposition is expected, the Jezebel spirit operating within the church is a strategy of the enemy to weaken God's people. As Jesus warned, Jesus knew their thoughts and said to them, "Every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not stand." Be wary of those who speak negatively about their fellow believers or persecute leaders and members. They may be influenced by the Jezebel spirit. While we don't have to agree with everything in the church, God calls us to intercede and correct with love, not to cause divisions or strife. As we saw earlier, Jezebel's end was grim. Furthermore, in the book of Revelation, Jesus warns the church in Thyatira for tolerating this Jezebel spirit among them. "I know your deeds, your love and faith, your service and perseverance, and that you are now doing more than you did at first. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet. By her teaching, she misleads my servants into sexual immorality and the eating of food sacrificed to idols. I have given her time to repent of her immorality, but she is unwilling. So I will cast her on a bed of suffering, and I will make those who commit adultery with her suffer intensely, unless they repent of her ways. I will strike her children dead. Then all the churches will know that I am he who searches hearts and minds, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds." If someone in your church exhibits these characteristics, start praying for them. They may be influenced by a demonic spirit that needs to be cast out. But be cautious not to be used by the enemy by engaging in gossip or defaming them. Love is the fulfillment of the law, and as Christians, we should pursue peace above all else. Many of these individuals may be religious, but lack a genuine experience with God, so they need our blessings. However, if the person refuses help, there's little that can be done. The Bible is clear about the consequences for those who allow any demonic spirit to dominate their lives, as the psalmist wrote. "Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction. If you like the video, please leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and may God bless your life.